Okay, hi everyone, it's Ejay here. It's time for the next series in our Fire and Ice faction guide, and things are really getting weird now because we have Chris Harris, or Fruity Harris, joining us for the variable factions. So that is the Shapeshifters and the Riverwalkers, and yeah, those are really, really different, interesting factions. I was extremely keen to have Chris to do one of these guides because he set up and runs the Fire and Ice ladder on the Snellman website. So that is a really great way to play these variable factions in a tournament form. He's been running the ladder for a long time now and doing a great job of it. So if you play Snellman or you're interested, go and have a look at that. Respect for Chris for doing these factions, as, like I mentioned, they are arguably the most complicated and maybe the least well understood by the community. So he was sort of drawing on his experience, and there's not much in the literature about these variable factions, especially the Riverwalkers. But they're really interesting. I'm sure people are having fun playing them, but we can try and learn how to be better here. Again, I hope you find this useful. If you can, I would refer to the faction boards, which are linked in the notes while you listen through, so you can sort of reference and try playing some games while you listen through or whatever, and come back and improve. Yes, I hope this is enjoyable and useful. This is Fruity Harris talking to me, Ejay, about the variable factions. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm very excited. I've been listening to the podcast. Very much enjoying the Benia episode.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
Love the name. Yeah, that's great.
I think Ghostly was the original one who came up with the using the air pun.
Nice.
In the name. They've been really good fun to make. I would probably just keep making them even if nobody was listening, because I just like talking to people, and it's really good that people are enjoying them. Yeah, it's good to hear you've listened.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to talking. I reckon I could talk for at least an hour about these factions. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well.
Cool. So yeah, originally when I was planning it, I was thinking it's going to be like 10 to 15 minutes per fact. I think I mentioned, didn't I, in the message?
Yeah.
And then I talked to Matt the Lesser, and it went on, and not that it went on for an hour. It did take an hour, and I was like, okay, 10 to 15 minutes per faction was way optimistic.
Yeah, he knows his ice factions as well. Yeah. Ice or on Volcano?
He was Volcano. Yes.
He told me everything about Ice Maidens that I know, but
okay. Yeah, he was very good. I will say, for the listener, for people who don't know, that you are Chris Fruity Harris, and you run the Fire and Ice ladder. So for people who are excited about the Fire and Ice factions coming to Board Game Arena, you can already play the Fire and Ice factions on Snellman, and you can join Chris's ladder.
Sure can.
And learn them in advance of them coming out on BGA. And the thing I really liked that you did is that video where you went through a game on the Fire and Ice ladder, and you weren't playing a Fire and Ice faction, where you were playing Engineers, I think.
Yeah, that was a real lockdown project. Just like, actually, obviously you're playing one move every like 2 or 3 days, and it's kind of actually managing to kind of remember to sort of record your thoughts after each one. Yeah, you can only really do it when you've got nothing else. Nothing else. Sure. Leave the house. But sure. Yeah, it was great. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, it was interesting to see you talk through it, and yeah, it was good. It was good. Well, okay, so I guess let's say which are the two variable factions in Fire and Ice, first of all.
Yeah, so we've got Shapeshifters and Riverwalkers.
And do you have a preference of which we go through first? Is there any that makes sense to go through first?
Good question. I think they're both crazy. They're both pretty crazy. I would say I'd say Shapeshifters are going to get more play.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine on BGA. So I think they're maybe marginally less crazy. Probably easier to explain.
Okay, but yeah, so I guess as well, I've forgotten my first question. Which the first question is, what does the variable terrain mean? So you don't, yeah, like how does that function in practice?
Yeah.
Compared to base factions and compared to the ice and volcano factions.
Yeah, right. So when you pick one of the variable factions, you immediately choose a home terrain from one of the 7 base terrains. So you can pick any that hasn't already been taken, which is all you do to start with, really. So that's pretty straightforward. But as you might guess, that gets a bit more complicated as the game progresses. So the shapeshifters will shift their shape. The Riverwalkers will do some crazy stuff. We'll get on to
that. Okay, so on shapeshifters, then, what is their ability, their faction ability that they have? And it's not actually related to the color change, is it?
That's right, yeah. So their ability is a bit like the cultist one. So if they build or upgrade next to someone and that person then accepts the leech, then they will get instead of the cultist would get a step up the cult track, they don't get that. Instead, they get a power token add straight into their third bowl, for which they have to pay 1 victory point. So yeah, that's right into the bowl, so they can spend it immediately if they so wish.
And then the stronghold is where the actual color changing ability comes in, right?
That's exactly right. Yes. So you can switch your home terrain to any of the terrains that aren't taken, and that costs you something. But there's 2 ways to pay for it. You can spend a standard power action. You can spend five power as if it was a standard power action, or you can instead remove 5 power tokens from any of your power bowls.
So there's a bit of synergy there because your ability lets you gain power tokens and then you can use those to fuel your transformations. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so I think it's worth just pointing out the 2 sort of distinct benefits of that base ability. So yeah, you've got this getting this power token is a massive economy boost just on its own terms. So at the very least a coin, which you're paying a victory point for, which is kind of like sort of alchemist levels of engine boosting. But although you'll probably only do it about 10-15 times in a game. But yeah, the second benefit is that you're gradually accruing these power tokens. You start with 8, not the 12 that everyone else starts with. But as you're using your main ability, you're accruing these power tokens that you will then be able to use to sort of power your stronghold ability. And so you'll be able to remove these 5 power tokens from bowls in your power bowls, probably 3 or 4 times in a game, which is plenty enough. You shouldn't ever really need to use the other ability, that one where you spend 5 power. So spend 5 power. That's quite an expensive way of shifting to a different terrain. You should be using the one where you take the power tokens out of your bowls.
So you've got that ability with the power and then the stronghold, which actually dominates the play with shapeshifters, or are they? Yeah, which is more important in a way?
Right. Yeah. Good question. I mean, it's probably the main ability, I would say, although it's a tough call. But yeah, I'd say the main ability is what's going to is what makes them kind of quite an econ-based faction, economy-based faction. Like they should be able to get quite a lot of stuff out just because they're gaining all this extra kind of extra income early on. And it also defines kind of where they're going to start. They're going to start near people, and they're going to make sure they're building near people.
Much like as you play with cultists.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so it's kind of across in terms of strategy, it's sort of a cross between cultists and alchemists early on, and then you might end up getting a stronghold somewhere, probably towards middle or end of the game. Yeah, in fact, I think a lot of people do try and get the stronghold kind of round 3 or 4, but what we're seeing at the top of the ladder at the moment is a lot of people having success, or I say a lot. Not many people play these factions, which is why I'm so excited for them to come onto Board Game Arena. But when people do play Shapeshifters at the top level, these days I'm seeing a lot of people building stronghold in like round 5 or 6. So it ends up being quite late.
Okay, so you stick to one color and then only shift at the very end.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess, yeah, I don't know this. Can they build on a color that's not their color?
So yeah, they can use spades like any other faction. Yeah, so they can still use spades. When they're shifting shape, they can't shift to anyone else's home terrain.
Okay. Which does that come into play when you've got volcano factions in the game? Because volcano factions don't have home terrain, so you can shift more.
Yeah, that's right. So if you're playing against 3 or God help you 4 sort of base factions, then you've got very few options of where you can actually shift to, because most of the other terrains are someone's home terrain. But yeah, if you're playing against an ice faction and a volcano faction, then they don't worry you. They don't affect where you can shift to at all.
This is maybe an aside. Have you ever played with them in real life on like a physical in-person game?
Yeah, I have, and I'm actually quite interested to see how it gets implemented on Board Game Arena, because there's actually a big difference between real life and Snellman in terms of just how it looks.
Yes.
So on Snellman, there's this weird thing where when you shift, say I'm playing as green, so all of my dwellings on green terrain, and then I suddenly shift to red. On Snellman, all of the hexes that all my dwellings were on get turned to red, and the dwellings get turned to red. And it's like it's a bit of a sort of quite hard to get your head around. You're like, oh, is this a game? And when you're playing against them, you're like, what's just happened? Is this the game I was playing? But in real life, it's kind of it's not so crazy, but it's actually in many ways maybe a little bit harder to actually read the board, because you just you keep your original color pieces, or that's what I did when I played it anyway, and then you start. So I've taken my green dwellings, I'm starting to just put them on red hexes, and so I think your opponents could quite rightly say like, what are you doing? And I would guess that's how they'll implement it in Board Game Arena as well. So it'll be a bit of a kind of take people a while before they kind of remember that shapeshifters are doing something a bit funny.
What color they're on? Yeah, but that did break my brain when I played on. I've only played one game with them on Snellman, and just that sudden change. But also, I was playing on. I think it was the first time I played on fjords or lakes, and so I didn't know what the colors of the hexes were before.
Yes,
I was like totally messed my mind of this like crazy changes. But it does mean that you can, at the end of the game, I did some extra shape shifts, even though I had nothing left to build, to try and get the most attractive overall color palette for the board. You can do some like style points, shape shift at the end, and Snowman. So is there anything else important to note about them? I'm just reading they can't upgrade digging beyond the first level. Anything else important?
The stronghold is weirdly cheap. It's only 3 workers and 6 coins. And I think the sanctuary, I think, is 4 workers and 6 coins. But yeah, the stronghold's quite cheap, which does enable a kind of that sort of mid-game build. If that's a totally valid strategy as far as I'm concerned. You could even build it quite early, but I don't think that's quite as recommended. They only start with 8 power tokens, 4 in bowl 1 and 4 in bowl 2. And you're not going to be burning much power. It's not quite as bad as the Dragon Lords, where you just be like, you should never burn any power with Dragon Lords. Shapeshifters, you can probably afford to burn 1 or 2 power early on to get one of those power actions in round one, but you might have to, by the time you've got your power through to bowl 3, even with a couple of kind of gaining power tokens straight into bowl 3, you're most of the good power actions have gone, so you might end up burning some of those.
Cool. So that kind of brings us on to like their basic strategy tips. Like, what kind of things are you doing with them in terms of, you've mentioned like how, at what point in the game you might build your stronghold and stuff, but is there anything else that you do with them?
Because you're trying to claw back the sort of the victory points you're spending on these power tokens, it's pretty much a given that you're going to be trying to get Earth 1. So because you need to get those victory points back somehow.
Much like Alchemists, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they're like a kind of like an Alchemist light. So yeah, you're only going to spend maybe 15 points on those power tokens, but it's still, that's quite a big head start to give people. For the same reason, I wouldn't expect it to see them being bid down that much in auctions, because I think they're going to be hard to kind of win by a country mile with. But they are quite versatile. I think the best time to what you see often in terms of when to pick them is actually as a kind of fourth pick, and you kind of know what color you want to be because of what colors other people have chosen, but you don't really like the look of the two the two factions that are on that color. You're like, well, I want to be green, but witches and Allen don't look like they're very very strong here. I'm going to pick Shapeshifters and green. They're quite versatile. They can play in quite a lot of different. So long as you've got a few different ways to score points, they can play in a few different kind of setups. So yeah, you can just you can do that with them in fourth pick.
Okay, cool. And so yeah, even though the stronghold's cheap, you're not often opening stronghold because I guess you're going to build out on your home hexes, your initial home hexes first, and then look to maybe shift at some point and get some other cheap home hexes. Yeah,
that's right. Yes, I mean, if you start with a stronghold, then you just you're not getting Earth 1, which is one downside. But yeah, you should be able to use a couple of spades in rounds 1 and 2 to get onto some key hexes without having to shift.
And then, so you mentioned that the variable factions don't get played much on Snellman, where we don't have auction or Fire and Ice Ladder. You don't have. It's not adjusted VPs or anything, is it? No, it's just 20 VPs. So, are they good? Are they a strong faction, or are they one of the weaker ones?
So I would say they're average, but relatively versatile. So yeah, they're not too niche. I'd say they're average. I don't necessarily think the stats back that up. I think that's because they're quite kind of scary to play with, and they take a while to get used to. And not many people have really invested the time to actually kind of figure out how to play them. Yeah, I mean, a bit of history maybe. So when the expansion, Fire expansion came out, Shapeshifters and Riverwalkers were both massively overpowered, it turned out, and they've gone through quite a few different iterations of being nerfed to arrive at their current version. And I think people have sort of the kind of consensus has been formed that they're a little bit over nerfed, but I'm kind of hoping that we can change narrative on that when they get to Board Game Arena, and actually we'll find that they're kind of decent factions. They're just quite hard to play.
Yeah, sure. That's very interesting. And that is actually one of my questions, is how difficult are they to play? And I guess this is going to be a theme, that managing these variable factions is not easy in terms of using them effectively.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, partly their game, just because their game plan is hard to visualize. It's just really hard to kind of just get into the mindset of, okay, I'm brown now, but I'm going to shift to grey soon, and then look, all these hexes that will be open onto me. Oh, but then that brown hex that's the other side of that grey hex won't be available to me. So it's kind of you can kind of get yourself a bit confused playing it. I certainly found I did the first few times I played it. But bear in mind that goes for your opponents too. Like they don't even know what's going on, and trying to predict what Shapeshifters are going to do is it requires a fair bit of practice of having played against them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, that does mean it should be a fun one for people to get to get their teeth into. I did read an excellent Zoras talked about a crazy opening he did. I really want to read out the copy of what he wrote because it sounded hilarious. But basically, he did open Stronghold, and he managed to like get a town and do like 2 shapeshifts in the round 1 or something, and do this crazy thing. But he said he had to think about it so much, and he was wandering around the park, like visualizing all these crazy lines in his head, and it like broke his brain. And the way he wrote about it was very
excellent. Yeah, no, I made a post by Halai, is that how you pronounce it? Under his other moniker of Caravan Lizzie many years ago, talking about the fun of a round 1 Stronghold opening. But it's fun. I don't know if Zora's managed to win the game starting with Stronghold opening. I've never managed.
He said, favorite game of all time. I finished second. Shapeshifting twice to get a town in round 1. I used the spade on b5 to turn it green for a shapeshift that will only happen in round 4. I remember walking in a park in Quebec City while playing that round 1, the head full of lines and looking like a total lunatic. I remember feeling something close to disgust because it was too much.
That's amazing.
Cool. Okay. So do they work particularly well with any kind of map? I guess map, are they sort of innocuous too because of the shapeshifting? I don't know. Or any kind of expansion scoring in terms of outpost scoring or Stronghold Sanctuary or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so the map, slightly relevant. I mean, they are a little bit vulnerable to factions who can come and steal their hexes just between them shifting and building. I really wish that they had the rule that you can build as soon as you shift, build 1 dwelling as soon as you shift or something, because it's just so like frustrating. I really want to shift to this color, but as soon as I do, those blasted yetis are going to come and steal it from me, this hex from me, whatever.
Okay, that's something people should be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's easier on some maps than others. I've got a kind of theory that I've not really managed to bear out with any stats, that they're actually their best map might be fjords, because they're really good at kind of just punching through those really wide fjords, where they've got a little bit more protection than they do on something like the original map, where I've just had people just screw me over 2 million times. Aside from that, I mean, they're good in high scoring games. You can look for dwelling scoring just after Stronghold scoring. They do like all the expansion scorings, but they like some more than others. So the distance they can do really well at. Stronghold Sanctuary distance they can do pretty well at. The edge scoring, they're not quite as good as you might expect, and that's partly because of that vulnerability. So sort of by the time they're getting around to kind of building on the edge, people can start kind of stealing the hexes from them a little bit. But also I think because edge scoring involves everyone kind of dispersing out to the edges. So I think Shapeshifters and probably you'll find cultists also just aren't great at that, because it's like, well, I've got fewer neighbours than I would otherwise, and that kind of ruins my ability a bit.
Cool. Okay. And so the next question is, are they fun to play? And it sounds like they might be difficult, but once you get going, you can wander around parks thinking of all your crazy lines and visualizing them and have fun.
Definitely, yeah. That visualizing the game plan bit is definitely really fun. Yeah, I do see where it's coming from there. I also like them. I like the sociability that they sort of share with the cultists of actually trying to think about how to stay near people. And I like the kind of that VP investment that they share with the alchemists. That's one of a couple of my favorite kind of features of the game, and they have both of them. So it's I love playing with them for those reasons.
It's always playing with a high econ faction is always fun, isn't it? Like you feel like you're powerful, and then you just don't have any points left and you lose, but at least you had fun doing it.
Exactly. Even if you lose, you're going to have fun.
I guess the planning ahead thing though is going to be maybe a bit different in BGA world, because you've obviously got that time to plan ahead in a Snellman match, but this is, we're going to have the length of an auction or whatever, the 3 minutes when you pick your faction to sort of visualize that plan. And that doesn't sound like something I'd be capable of, but yeah.
it's going to be manic, and I expect that the right answer will be that maybe that will mean people will lean even more towards kind of building the stronghold late, which, as I say, it seems like quite a decent strategy anyway. And they're not too technical a faction aside from that sort of shifting. So until you build a stronghold, you can kind of just kind of go with the flow to some extent.
And then if you're up against the shapeshifters, are there any particular ways that you should look to counter them, or any things you should be afraid of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, they can definitely take you by surprise with their shifting, and suddenly they're stealing a key hex from you. But even more than that, they are vulnerable to aggressive factions going and stealing their key hexes. Just wait for them to shift and then go and pounce. Which is a good fun thing to do. Aside from that, I think looking to decline leech at sort of key points. So if they ever drop below 5 power tokens, don't let them get back up to 5 power tokens, and then they're toothless. They can't use either of their kind of costs to shift. So then they just can't shift. So just look out for that. Don't let them off the hook if they're on 4 power tokens.
Deny that leech that they offer you. That's interesting. Excellent. Very good. That was really good. I like that. So level 2. Yeah. Riverwalkers are, so I think I mentioned to Rance Savant when he was starting to program them, whether I think I asked which would be the easiest and hardest to program, and I think I suggested that Riverwalkers would probably be the hardest, and I think he agreed with me. I might be misremembering, but they're quite hard. They're quite weird to visualize.
Yeah, it sounds plausible. Yeah. There's a couple of maybe a couple of the landscape tiles that might make other factions hard, like the acolytes. But yeah, this one's gonna be so many weird rules. So hard to visualize. And we're going to try and do it on a podcast, which is sort of extra hard level.
So this is what Matt mentioned as well, which I think makes some sense. Is he suggested that maybe people would want to listen to what we talk about now, then go away and play a few games with the factions, and then maybe come back, and it might make a bit more sense listening to it again. And that's not just to pump up the numbers of downloads of the podcast. that's sounds like reasonable advice to me, that you might want to come back once you've got some idea. But let's have a go with it. What is the main ability of the Riverwalkers?
Cool. So you remember that they start with a home terrain, and they can't use any spades. As it says in the rulebook, they don't know what spades are. Spades are completely useless to them. Mm-hmm. But whenever you gain a priest from anywhere, instead of actually getting that priest, you can instead pay 1 or 2 coins to unlock an additional home terrain. So that would be another terrain that you can build on without paying any kind of terraforming cost.
Well, I guess I was going to say is often I find that it's worth sort of trying to visualize this as if you were playing in real life. And with shapeshifters, you've got a little wooden ring that you move around your faction board as you shift shapes, right? But with Riverwalkers, your color wheel, you start with a priest placed on every color, so it's locked off that you can't build on them. And as you get those priests, you take those priests off the color wheel, like you're unlocking the color, right?
That's exactly right. Yes, that's right. So you start with 6 priests dotted around the 6 colors on your color wheel that are part of your home terrain, and then that one priest that would be on your home terrain is in your supply. And then you gain a priest, say, from income round. Then instead of actually taking that priest from your supply, you leave that where it is, and actually that priest gets a little friend because you choose another color from your color wheel to take a priest off, pop that in your supply, and now you've got 2 colors. They don't have to be adjacent colors; they can be anywhere on a color wheel. 2 colors that are now free for you to build on, and that costs you 1 coin to do, or 2 coins if it's someone else's home terrain that you've unlocked.
So again, like the volcano factions, there's a little bit. Oh, and like the shapeshifters, there's a little bit of protection of
other folks' home terrain. It's slightly more expensive, but you can build on other folks' home terrain.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, sort of a similar kind of level of protection as the acolytes. I kind of not actually that much in practice. Given how fun it is to build on other people's home terrain, much less protection than shapeshifters or dragon lords.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's their ability, but they also have, that goes with their ability, they have the restriction of where they can build, right?
Yeah, this is the kind of tough bit, right? So the good news is you start with shipping value of 1. But the bad news is that you can only build on hexes that you can reach by river. So if you could only get to a hex via a land border, then you can't build on that hex.
Even if it's right next to a hex you've already built on.
Exactly.
It's inaccessible to the Riverwalkers. They've only got little boats that they paddle down the river.
Yeah, that's right. The theme kind of breaks down when you've got kind of like a bit like a sort of isthmus where you've got kind of like one, a sort of island of width 1, like you do in the kind of a bit of the Fire and Ice map. So you can they can traverse that 1 width hex and go and jump into another river. But anyway, that's a minor point. Basically, yeah, if you're trying to go via a land border from one hex to another, then that's not allowed.
Yeah, that is difficult to. It's difficult to picture. I hope we've explained that quite well. I'm thinking I just played diplomacy recently, and it's like fleets in diplomacy.
So yeah, there's a couple more things to just throw into the mix there. So you can't advance shipping. So you're stuck on 1. Although you can temporarily get to 2 shipping via the bonus tile that increases your shipping temporarily, and that does actually turn out to be occasionally useful, which is surprising. And the reason why it's occasionally useful is that although you can't reach a hex via a land border, if you do somehow actually end up on 2 hexes that are only joined via a land border, they do still count as connected for network purposes.
Oh my word. Okay. Right. Brilliant. Sure. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So you could do that a couple of ways. So you either obviously you're starting with 2, but starting on 2 different starting hexes, and so they may not be accessible to each other via any number of 1 ship jumps, but they might be accessible via a 1 ship jump and then a land border. And actually, if you manage to touch your sort of 2 empires from where the 2 places you started with, then they will now be one big network.
Cool. That makes sense. I guess as well, could you do it where if you're green, you could 2 ship to another green hex, and there's like a black hex in between, and you haven't yet unlocked black, but you know that later in the game you're going to unlock them and then connect that way. That could be a way you could use the temp ship as well, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it can be good sometimes just for early expansion as well as for like increasing your options. Because the thing, if anyone has managed to visualize this, they might be getting quite stressed out now about how on earth they're going to connect. Or how they're going to avoid getting cut off by people, because with a maximum 1 shipping and no ability to go via land, you can get sort of restricted pretty quickly. I'm playing a game at the moment where I'm playing against some Riverwalkers who it's round 3 and they're restricted to only 7 hexes on the map already.
Okay.
They'll never be able to go anywhere else on the map. So yeah, that's painful.
Okay. And then I'm just looking at, so there's the stronghold ability and towns as well. How do towns work differently with them?
No, towns work the same, and again, towns can be joined by land borders the same way as network. But the stronghold gives you 2 bridges immediately. That's what the stronghold ability is. So that's going to be very important for you to build. You are going to need bridges to build towns, because your dwellings are going to be all over the place on different sides of a river, and you're going to need to join them up with bridges if you want to turn them into towns.
Yeah. So so you build the stronghold, you immediately get 2 bridges. That's great. And then you building your towns. But those bridges are coming. They're still within your 3 limit in a match, right? Yeah, you can't build anymore. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, so talked about that for a long time, but the defining feature, it seems like, is this river. Well, it's the river walking way.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, is the defining feature more their one ship only built on rivers, or is it the unlocking new territory with priests?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it is that river walking that you're always thinking about when you're playing them. But obviously, they would be totally unplayable without a very relatively cheap way to gain new terrains. So that's that's pretty important too.
I guess it's worth mentioning that you can choose to just take a priest. If you want to take a priest to, I mean, you can't upgrade ship, but to send to a cult or something, you can take a priest as income rather than unlocking a terrain.
That's right. You can, and you will towards the end of the game. That will happen for sure. I mean, do we want to? Well, let's just quickly finish off the last kind of fiddly, annoying rule of the Riverwalkers, because when you talked about that, what it actually looks like in real life. So you've got all these priests covering these terrains. That means you've only got 1 priest in your supply, whereas everyone else has got 7, right? So someone else could theoretically gain 7 priests in round 1 and put them all to the cults, but you could only gain 1 priest from your supply because the rest are all locked up on your terrain wheel. So now that doesn't really matter that much in practice, because that's the first time you gain a priest in the game, you're basically going to use it to unlock a terrain instead. Now you've got 2 priests in your supply, so you'll be fine. You'll rarely run out of priests. But yeah, it's just for completeness, we should mention that fiddly bit of rule as well.
Sure. And is there anything else about them that we've mentioned? That they can't dig, so they can't upgrade digs either?
Yeah, there's a couple of things they share with the engineers, which is that their second temple does not give a priest; it gives 5 power, and also that their 3rd and 6th dwellings don't give any worker income or any income at all.
Sure, yes. So that is very similar to the engineers, although they do have a base worker income, do they, with no dwellings?
I believe so. Yes, they do. They also only start. They do only start with. They have 12 power tokens, but 10 of them start in bowl 1, so it takes them a long time to get up to anything that they could spend on a power action. In particular, you're not guaranteed to be able to buy a priest in round 1.
Yeah, which I guess, as we talk about basic strategies, I guess, yeah, you're looking for the priest bonus tile to be in the game, and maybe you're going to take it into round 1, and then you're looking to hit that priest power action fairly often, I guess.
Maybe. So I think that sounds totally valid, and I think that is how they're played quite a lot. I mean, ultimately, no one really knows. There's very few people who've even sort of been brave enough to say what a good Riverwalker strategy might be. I think it's very natural to sort of assume that you're going to want to get your priest income sorted, which ideally by building a temple, but there's other ways too. And then you're going to want to build a load of dwellings. And then there's 2 reasons why there's a good reason to do that. One is that once you've even unlocked 1 terrain, you can do a bit more fun version of what Zoras is doing in Quebec, which is basically you can just stare at the board and be like, oh my god, I can go there. Like, even with like 2 terrains and 1 shipping, you can build a bunch of dwellings. And once you've got like 3 terrains and 1 shipping, you're like the map is your oyster.
Yeah.
So it's very tempting to put down those dwellings, and it's also very tempting to do because you're immediately stressed out about how on earth you're going to connect all your dwellings, because it's so easy to be cut off, as we said before. So I think that is a pretty standard way of playing. They don't do very well, and I have a theory that I am working on proving, which I will share with your listeners as a reward for getting this far. through the description of Riverwalkers. Which is actually the best way to play them, is to try and get up to 2 temples as quickly as possible. Like ideally by getting the 2 worker bonus tile and just getting 2 temples in round 1. So you get Earth 1, and then you can get either Fire 2 or Earth 2 or Fire 1. So either the worker income or the coin income, depending on what's kind of scarce in the game. And at that point, your income is so strong because you're getting that 5 power every turn.
From the second temple.
From the second temple. You're getting some income from your income favor. And you will be able to build loads of dwellings with a bit of patience. You might only be able to build two dwellings in round 2, but then suddenly you'll be able to build as many dwellings as you can shake a stick at in round 3, and a load more in round 4. And your engine becomes so strong that actually you can you'll get up to at least 15 structures by the end of the game. So even if you don't actually connect, even if one of your temples just gets stranded as people build around it, you're probably still going to do pretty well on the end game scoring. You will get you will also find that actually you'll be able to be more aggressive because you're holding off on your dwellings until around 3 or 4. You can actually start being quite sort of surgical about, right, I'm going to build here because that's going to annoy this faction. I'm going to build there because it's going to annoy that faction, rather than just having to kind of like throw some down at the beginning of the game and everyone can then build around you. So that's my theory, and it's definitely borne out in the games I've played with the Riverwalkers so far. Building 2 temples in round 1 looks to be pretty strong, but it's early days.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. That's really interesting. I guess, and I mean, generally, the stronghold is giving you bridges. You're not looking to build it early. It's not an economic stronghold, so that's going to come later when you're finishing towns off and you need those bridges. That's
right, and generally also the sanctuary. So you're looking for like big buildings in the end later rounds purely for the purpose of getting your towns out. So the big building and town tiles towards the end of the game is good. The other thing that's pushed me towards the sort of holding off on building dwellings is just that that worker income issue around dwelling 3 and 6 not giving you worker income. I think I can't remember who, but someone posted a great kind of mathematical analysis of the engineers where they were like, this is your kind of return on investment for your dwellings per dwelling as you go up as the engineers, and kind of like it just makes so much sense to stick on 2 dwellings basically, or either 2 or 8 dwellings as the engineers.
That in Zoras's ultimate guide, I don't know if he originally posted it, but he mentions that 2 dwellings with Earth 2 as engineers is a very efficient income place to be.
Cool. So exact same thing for the Riverwalkers, and they can use that power as well for coins and workers. So
this is what's kind of good, is you've got you've kind of got the cultists and alchemists analogy for shapeshifters, and then you've got the engineers analogy to help you sort of manage playing with with Riverwalkers. We've talked about the basic strategies. I guess we're also talking about like how they work well. So you were talking about late towns, mid-game dwellings, and later stronghold sanctuary as well. Is there anything else? I'm guessing you don't necessarily want or need the spade bonus tile in the game because they can't use it. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, you definitely want to look for no spades, low spade games. They're very, as you might imagine, very reactive to what map it is. So they are really nice to play on Loon Lakes, but they are horrible to play on fjords.
Because Lakes has got lots of sort of one ship.
Yeah.
Land masses separated, and then fjords, like you mentioned before, you've got that big expanse of island that they literally can't get there, right? Can they? They just
that's right, yeah,
can't get in there. I'm thinking as well, is there's that, you know, like a witch's dwelling rush or a green faction dwelling rush on base map. If you're green Riverwalkers on base map, is that something you can do? You've got all those green hexes, one ship away. Could you smash out a load of dwellings that way as Riverwalkers?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, there's I think it's, you know, you can certainly get a temple and 2 dwellings down as Green Riverwalkers on the base map very easily. I think you'd have to, if I remember rightly, you'd have to either have the shipping bonus tile or manage to unlock the grey terrain to get to a proper dwelling rush. But yeah, you could certainly do that. And yeah, that's nice and fun. But I think that the problem with using temporary shipping there is that then you've got to fill in all the gaps before anyone else blocks you off.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
On this expansion scoring, they're great with clusters because they're building clusters. They're pretty bad at edge scoring. They're surprisingly hard to get to the edge of the maps, most of the maps, when you're when you can only build on rivers. There is a kind of like a play on fjords where you go sort of north or east, but yeah, it's going to be a bit painful.
Clusters makes a lot of sense. So yeah, because you are just dotting your buildings around the rivers. Yeah. Cool. So are they good or bad, or is it unknown?
I mean, I would say it's unknown. I think what they are is niche. So if you're looking at a board and it's low spade, it's on Loon Lakes, and it's cluster scoring, then Riverwalkers are pretty like good shout, especially if it's late scoring for towns or for big buildings. Then yeah, absolutely jump on Riverwalkers and pay quite a bit for them, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas yeah, if it's the opposite of that, if it's fjords, loads of spades, maybe low coin, unless you are planning to go for the 2 temple strategy, then they don't thrive in a low coin game. Then yeah, I think sort of steer clear basically.
Cool. Yeah, I guess actually one thing I forgot to ask is, are you trying to win cults as Riverwalkers, or are you just not have the priests? Are they a culty faction at all?
We definitely have spare priests later in the game. So yeah, you're probably going to end up gaining maybe 6 or 7 priests, and you're only going to really want to unlock, I don't know, maybe 4 terrains. So you are going to have a few priests. So you might be able to compete on one of the kind of less helpful cults, one that doesn't actually get you any bonuses out of the game, and it's kind of still sitting there relatively uncontested towards the end. You can chuck a couple of priests there because you won't while everyone else is spending them on advancing shipping. So, but it's a bit kind of opportunistic. It's not something to factor into a game plan much, I would say.
Yeah, and you're not going to get those income cults. I guess that's another thing. Now I think of it, are you generally ending up with all of the non-opponent colors unlocked on the color wheel? Is that like a common situation because you've got the cheap unlocks, or is that not really the case?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I've noticed that. I'm a relatively aggressive player, and I probably tend to go for the opponent's colors. It's only 1 coin extra, and it just means that you get red suddenly. Chaos magicians are sort of starting to get a little bit worried about where they're gonna place all their dwellings or whatever it is. So I think for me, I don't pay that much mind, and I just try and think about where it's going to be most annoying for my opponents.
Yeah, am I thinking about it the wrong way? Because like Dragon Lords, it's twice the cost to attack an opponent's hex. But yeah, actually, in the scheme of things, 1 coin isn't that much. So maybe I'm thinking about it the wrong way. And it sounds like it's worth being more aggressive and threatening your opponent's home color more.
Yeah.
Cool. Very nice. Right. There's maps and stuff. And so like you're saying that, they're pretty tricky to play and they are still being developed. So it would be interesting to see what happens with them being played on BGA. But they do sound kind of fun. And when I've seen them played once, and they do look like quite a laugh to be sailing around the rivers and dotting buildings everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. They're really fun, and they, yeah, especially once it sort of starts a bit slowly, maybe, and then you kind of unlock a couple of lanes, and suddenly you're just kind of yeah, you're doing a sort of supermarket sweep type thing around and around the map. They're like, oh yeah, take that, and the frustrations are that you run out of dwellings, and you run out of coins if you're doing a kind of either sort of zero temple or one temple opening, and then suddenly it can be a bit of a slog as you're kind of trying to upgrade your trading post so you can build more dwellings, and it's kind of a bit like you're always at sort of 7 or 8 dwellings, and you can't quite afford to pay the coins to upgrade your trading post, and you're nowhere near a town being formed because all your dwellings everywhere. So it's kind of it can be a bit of a roller coaster of a kind of like stressful start, fun middle, and then or a fun kind of early mid game, and then a kind of quite a slog in the mid game.
Sure.
But I think if you kind of look out for that and find ways to avoid that situation, then yeah, they're really fun for sure.
That's cool. Yeah. I think there's also something fun about them because I'm looking at the rules and the Riverwalker he's just like a dude with some hair and an oar in his hand. And
Yeah.
like the other faction is like the Dragon Lords, the Yetis, and he's like a huge Yeti. But you know, the Riverwalker, they've just got their little boats and they just go around building their dwellings, and in the end they might win and beat the Dragon Lords who've run out of power and can't build any more dwellings.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. In my head, they're kind of walking on stilts. I don't know if that's actually like canon or not, but in my head, they've all got big stilts they use to cross the rivers.
Yeah. Yes. I like it. Yeah. So yeah, just picture that as you're playing with them. That's why winning with engineers is fun as well, because the nerds conquer all.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. That's really good. And then finally, other factions playing against Riverwalkers. What are we worried about, or how can we counter them in any way? I guess building on the rivers is a good way, and because you're taking their hexes.
Yeah, good point. And just I'm just looking for ways to block them. I mean, it can be quite it can be quite mean. Just they're one of the few factions where they'll just have one hex. If they get it, then everything's looking rosy, and if they don't, then their game is ruined. And depending how ruthless you are as a player, you may well have an opportunity to take that hex. It might cost you a bit, it might be really cheap for you, but you may well just have a chance to just go and grab that hex that just ruins their game. So that's an option. Generally, you can block and frustrate them. And you need to watch out as well for they can suddenly just get to a point where they can kind of screw with some of your plans, but much more, I think you can screw with their plans.
Okay, yeah, but obviously, if they get to the point where they're unlocking your color, you need to lock up those hexes that they might have access to.
True, and this is the other thing why like my current mantra for Riverwalkers is focus on sort of expansion, not connection. When I'm playing as the Riverwalkers, because actually, if you don't worry too much about actually trying to connect up all of your hexes, and you kind of just try and expand as far as you can from one of your starting dwellings, and don't worry about the other one, you can actually find that you can still do pretty well in terms of network scoring at the end, and it just takes away a load of stress, and it means you're much less vulnerable. Suddenly, it's the connection bit where you're vulnerable. In terms of actually expanding, you're generally going to have options. So long as you're a little bit smart, you're generally going to have a few different ways you can unlock a different terrain color, and then you've got a few more places you can expand into.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I really like that little tip. That's cool. I guess as well as other factions playing against them, you at least know that if they haven't unlocked your color yet, they cannot build on your hexes. In that way, your hexes can be very safe.
Yeah, that's true, and I think it's definitely worth taking a little bit of time just to think about which terrain are they going to unlock next. And if it's not yours, then that means you don't have to be quite so kind of defensive, and you can actually just be good neighbours with them and get a nice little leech off them, and know that your hex is nice and safe, and actually they're protecting you from other factions coming in and grabbing your terrain. So actually, yeah, I think if you can look at them and be like, I would definitely not unlock red at this point, then you can play nicely with them.
Okay. And am I starting to overthink this now? But you could even like, so say your witches, you could like leave them a blue hex
Right.
that you might have dug normally, but then you're like, oh, there's this blue hex, and then there'll be blue instead of green, and you can just tinker. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it.
What I did do in a game recently is I spent quite a bit as dwarves. I spent quite a few workers, more than I would normally would, grabbing a grey hex next to the Riverwalkers just to make it really, really obvious to them that they shouldn't unlock the grey terrain next. Because now, which meant that the rest of my grey hexes were safe to fight another day. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely kind of a little bit of influencing that you can do around that.
That's nice. Oh, excellent. I feel like you've done a very good job of, what the best possible job of explaining, especially in the Riverwalkers, a very difficult faction. Is there anything else to know, or anything else you want to mention about them or about the Shapeshifters?
I don't think so. No, just to reiterate that I'm just really looking forward to seeing the kind of strategy develop, and I kind of hope that I can listen back to this in a year's time and find out I was totally wrong about how to play both these factions, and it's actually all these other ways that you should play them. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the BGA community just getting on it.
Cool, yeah, and I will link to there's Steve 496's threads, right? I haven't actually looked at the Shapeshifter. I haven't looked at any of the expansion faction ones, actually, to be honest. But yeah, there is some sort of prior art in there for people to have a look at, I guess. But yeah, it will be interesting to see.
And there's like one post in the Riverwalkers one.
Okay. Which is fun. It's fun to think that there's like potentially new ground to be found, even though I am overall scared of these expansion factions because change is scary.
Yeah. Some auctions will be difficult to judge, but yeah. And the landscape. I mean, I've never played with the landscape expansions with these guys, so yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. I haven't even thought of the landscapes. Do you have any idea about them?
Shapeshift just as easy enough. You can just do one shapeshift straight away, which I think would be pretty powerful. But yeah, I can't remember what the Riverwalkers one is, and I'm sure it will be extremely complex.
Okay, sure. Oh, right, here we go. I've loaded it up. The Riverwalkers is just a dwelling that you put on the river, the floating palace.
Oh, right. It's a bit like the mermaids. Yeah, I was thinking of the mermaids as another analogy to Riverwalkers, except that the big difference being mermaids can expand to 5 shipping and the Riverwalkers 6 to 1. But yeah, okay, so it's a similar. That's similar. That's like basically the same as the mermaids.
Maybe, yeah, sounds about it. I guess the other thing mermaids can actually build on land, other than like the Riverwalkers.
Yeah,
who have no shipping and cannot build in. This awful faction. My goodness. No.
They're great.
They're good. Cool. This is really good. Thank you very much. It was really nice to have you, the proprietor of the Fire and Ice Ladder, to do one of these. I'm very grateful for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. You're very welcome.
And yes, I suggest everyone goes and plays on the Fire and Ice Ladder, because that's there. Or you can even just try them out on Snellman. But yeah, the Fire and Ice Ladder is a great thing that's been running. How long have you been doing it for now? Quite a few years, right?
I think it's been a couple of years. So we do a game every 2 weeks, and we're on to games close to game 100. So it must be close to 4 years, maybe 3.5 years. And yeah, game every 2 weeks. Go to. Well, the URL is fireiceladder.azurewebsites.net, but I think if you just type Fire Ice Ladder, or one word, into your favorite search engine, you should find the website. And sign up. It's point of a ladder is it's accessible for all different kind of abilities.
Yeah, And you get a game every 2 weeks, don't you? It's not like TM Tour where they all happen at once. It's every 2 weeks a new game starts, and you could sort of complete it at your leisure as long as it's within the Snellman time limits.
Yeah, it's nice and relaxing. Although that presents surprising difficulties for designing a ladder. Actually, like having games that might finish at any time in any order. Took us quite a while to sort of arrive at a good format of how you actually kind of process those games and move people up and down the ladder. But as you'd expect, the sort of Terra Mystica community on BGG did a great job of kind of helping me through that design process. I mean, I think we got to some pretty good answers now.
I read the whole thread. I love the way you guys developed it and you were working it. And I even like got out a pen and paper and worked out how the scoring system worked, because I was just like, there's this formula and it's got N's and S's and T's and it like updates your score. But yeah, it's updating your score based on like when the game comes in, which you don't know.
Yeah,
it's very clever. I love it. Great work.
Beautifully over-engineered.
No, it's awesome. Great. Thank you very much for talking. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
See you later.
Awesome. All right. You too. Thanks.